My mom said, if you don't buy a house, she won't let us get married.
I'll buy a house, but can we wait a bit longer? I don't have that much money right now.
I don't care. Either you buy a house or we break up.
I love you so much. Can't my love outweigh a house? You also know our current situation. Why can't we build our lives together? How about I pay the down payment?
This is the most basic requirement and you can't even meet it. Why shouldn't I find someone who treats me well and is more financially secure? Why should I marry you? This is a common dispute seen among Chinese couples before marriage. In the past 20 years, an interesting thing emerged in China. Marriage and buying a house became inseparable. It even gave rise to jokes, saying that the mother-in-law directly promotes the Chinese property market. Because in China, mothers-in-law won't agree to marry their daughters to men who can't afford to buy a house, and love often can't compete with a house. This trend, where Chinese men and women, upon meeting, have the expectation that the woman will inquire about the man's home ownership, appears to have shifted towards a new extreme, opting neither to marry nor to purchase a house. Why is this happening? Chinese housing prices have been rising for over 20 years, and many people can't afford to buy. Being unable to afford a house will lead to rejection, so they can't get married. Being single and not getting married means there's no need to buy a house. This seems to form a logical, consistent, unsolvable loop. Older people have briefly summed up the key reason why young people in China don't like to get married today. Why do you think young people don't like to get married now?
Pressure, of course.
Pressure?
Yes.
What kind of pressure are you referring to?
Firstly, you must have a house.
Is it necessary?
Of course. How can you get by without a house?
Is a house necessary?
Of course.
If you buy a house before getting married, you probably can't skip buying an engagement ring either. But the current situation doesn't seem to be that anymore. CEO of De Beers, the world's largest diamond mining company, Al Cook, said that in the past, those who bought apartments or houses were eager to buy diamonds. However, now China's demand is being affected by factors such as the decline in young people getting engaged and married. According to data from independent diamond analyst Paul Zimnisky, diamond jewelry sales in China fell by 3% last year. The industry originally expected the Greater China region to grow at the fastest rate, but the result was a consecutive second year of contraction. As a result, traders and producers predict that the price of natural rough diamonds will continue to be low this year. It seems like a stretch, but in fact, this decline in data is closely related to the current downturn in China's real estate industry. The crisis in China's real estate industry is becoming increasingly severe. Problems such as deflation and low investor optimism make the Chinese authorities extremely anxious. At the same time, sales of natural diamonds in the Chinese market have declined significantly. According to WWW International Diamond Consultants, price of natural polished diamonds fell by 18% last year due to decreased demand in China. Nikunj Haresh Dobariya of diamond wholesaler Zuri based in Hong Kong said that demand for natural diamonds in China has dropped by 50% compared to pre-pandemic levels. He told the Financial Times that right now it's very difficult to do business in China. The number of marriages in China has been declining for 9 consecutive years, reducing by half within a decade. According to data from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, in 2022, only 6.8 million couples in China got married, compared to the peak of 13.5 million in 2013. Every Valentine's Day should have seen a small peak for marriage registrations, but it became quiet since the beginning of 2022. Home Affairs Bureau in Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou, and other places have few couples coming to register for marriage. Only a few couples were waiting in line outside the marriage registration office in Taoyang District Home Affairs Bureau in Beijing. Online marriage appointments in Qing'an District, Shanghai decreased significantly compared to before. The number of marriage appointments on Valentine's Day in Putuo District, Shanghai was less than 40% of usual. The number of marriage appointments in Gongshu District, Hangzhou was also half of the usual. Less than 20 couples lined up at the marriage registration office in Jinshui District, Zhengzhou. Some people even overestimated and thought there would be long lines and they would need to hire someone to queue for them. The decline in China's population and marriage rate are mutually linked. The declining birth rate leads to lower population, which inevitably leads to a decrease in the number of marriages. The decrease in the number of marriages in turn leads to a decrease in birth rate. China is now trapped in this vicious cycle. Research manager at Beijing Daxue consulting firm Lai Mingyi told the Financial Times that one of the reasons why young consumers choose to be single is because they lack the economic resources needed for marriage. Especially for women, more and more of them do not want to start a family. In 2021, a survey of 2,900 urban unmarried young couples showed that about 44% of women did not intend to get married. The proportion of unmarried urban women aged 25 to 29 has risen from 8.6% in 2000 to 40.6% in 2020. On the other hand, many Chinese men say that they can't afford the cost of marriage. They point out that the cultural pressure forces them to own a house and a car even before they start dating. Many men say that they delay marriage because they lack economic security. During CCP's one-child policy, and due to many Chinese people's tendency of favoring sons over daughters, there are about 35 million more men than women, which exacerbates the economic competition for marriage. Although the CCP's one-child policy actually ended several years ago, they have been unable to reverse the gender ratio imbalance and the significant drop in the willingness to give birth. It is extremely rare for unmarried partners or single individuals to have children in China, so the decline in the marriage rate is directly related to the decline in the birth rate. China's population decreased by 850,000 in 2022, the first decline in over 60 years since the Great Chinese Famine in the early 1960s. The underlying reasons here are due to the continued downturn in the Chinese economy, extreme competition in the workplace, and stringent government control, which have all lowered the Chinese young people's motivation. From lying flat, couch potato, to the recent popularity of the so-called 10 no's youth lifestyle. Not getting married, not buying a house, not having children, not donating blood, not donating money, not trading stocks, not buying funds, not buying lottery tickets, not being moved, and not helping the elderly. Young people in China are becoming more and more indifferent. When not getting married becomes popular, it's no wonder that the sale of engagement rings is sluggish. Even those who are getting married are shying away from diamonds. In the current economic downturn, many Chinese women planning to get married are giving up diamond engagement rings because the uncertainty of the economic downturn has made people pessimistic about future income. Items that are difficult to liquidate and depreciate as soon as they are bought, such as diamonds and other luxury goods, naturally deter more people. In Chinese ancient culture, weddings are supposed to be grand affairs. In Chinese folk culture, weddings are supposed to be grand affairs. This inevitably leads to a series of expenditures, including purchasing expensive jewelry, holding wedding banquets, and going on honeymoon trips. However, one of China's current problems is weak consumption, as people are unable or unwilling to spend. Restaurants are closing in large numbers, travel like the poor is becoming popular, and the consumption of non-essential luxury items has decreased significantly. According to data from Chinese company information provider T-Cha-Cha, as of December 21, 2023, the number of restaurants that have been deregistered in China exceeded 1.27 million, more than twice the total of 2022, setting a new record since 2020. According to data released by the China Gold Association, the actual consumption of gold jewelry decreased by nearly 30% in 2020. And it was more than 8% in 2022. In the domestic food industry in China, especially in small cities below the third tier, wedding banquets are an important source of income for restaurants. And gold jewelry is almost an indispensable part of Chinese wedding spending. The decline in both of these two industries is undoubtedly due to the decline in Chinese marriage rate. Buying a house will also lead to a series of spending, such as decoration, purchasing furniture, and home appliances. If houses cannot sell, it will only hurt the real estate industry. The following set of data, most of which show double-digit declines, shows how other industries in China are suffering from the real estate industry's woes. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the total output value of China's building and renovation industry decreased by nearly 12% in 2022. In July 2023 alone, the total retail sales of building materials decreased by more than 11% compared to the previous year. In 2022, the operating income of China's national furniture manufacturing industry decreased by more than 8%, and from January to May 2023, it decreased by another 10.5% year-on-year. According to data analysis from the e-commerce data company Jincai, the sales of entire home appliance industry in 2023 decreased by about 15% year-on-year, and the annual sales revenue decreased by about 14% year-on-year. It can be seen that industries such as decoration, furniture, and home appliances are all showing a significant downward trend, mostly due to the predicament of China's real estate industry. According to the 2022 China Statistical Yearbook as of the end of 2021, the number of single people in China has reached 239 million, and the marriage and childbearing age of young people is generally being delayed. The 2020 China Population Census Yearbook shows that the average age of first marriage in China in 2020 was 28.67 years old, an increase of 3.78 years compared to 24.89 years old in 2010. This news has attracted widespread attention. Some commentators pointed out, it is not that getting into a relationship is difficult, but young people nowadays are becoming less and less willing to get into a relationship. China is currently one of the countries with the lowest birth rates in the world. The phenomenon of unwillingness to get married is causing concern among policymakers. China was once the most populous country in the world, but now it is struggling to deal with the problems of declining birth rates and rapidly aging population. Due to social stigma, unmarried women cannot have children. Therefore, marriage rate is closely related to birth rate. Moreover, the unwillingness to get married is not exclusive to the lower and middle classes, but has even spread to the upper-income affluent class. In some upscale venues in Shanghai, there are sometimes ticketed social events specially for affluent, highly educated singles, which are equivalent to high-end matchmaking events. Young entrepreneurs participating in these events may be seen as diamond bachelors, but many of them admit that the cost of marriage is very high, especially in big cities like Shanghai. They want to get married, but high housing prices, uncertain employment prospects, and the overall economy are all obstacles. Some participants in the event said, "It's not that we want to be single, but the society structure and economic conditions have led to this result." And the person in charge of this singles gathering, Julia's Events, said that more and more people over the age of 35 have actually given up on marriage. Chinese young people are not only unwilling to get married, but there is also an emerging trend of outright rejecting love. Many young Chinese are condemning love's drug as a modern plague and claiming love as nothing more than a scam in a consumerist society. These seemingly extreme remarks of the younger generation can be interpreted as an attitude mocking the common CCP brainwashing rhetoric and values. For example, the CCP often advocates dedication and sacrifice, which young people ridicule as not worth it. Since dating also requires money, the younger generation mocks it as a consumption scam, and the fact that the CCP now wants to push people into the marriage hall to contribute to the population is also ridiculed by young people. On the other hand, it can also be interpreted as the long-standing practice in Chinese society of tying love and marriage to houses, which has molded the younger generation into extremely utilitarian and practical love-incapable individuals. On Chinese social media platforms like Hupu and Douban, a cautious approach towards romantic relationships is prevalent among the youth. They fear that showing vulnerability in love could lead to disadvantage. Many young men are particularly wary of gold diggers, focusing on protecting their finances to avoid being exploited for their wealth. Conversely, young women are even more cautious, aware of the risk associated with falling in love. They often discuss adopting a male perspective on love, which includes being indifferent to romantic relationships, prioritizing practical considerations, minimizing emotional investment, seeking short-term happiness, treating friends with the closeness of family, and viewing relationships with men as transient and non-essential. This reflects a perception among young people of love as a strategic game, driven by a deep fear among Chinese youth of socio-economic decline. In their effort to protect themselves, they may have sacrificed their zest for life. They treat love not as a cherished experience but a mere accessory in a society focused on struggle or as a means for social mobility. The evolution from the 4 no's youth to the 10 no's youth in China now potentially includes no dating. This trend is seen as a symptom of broader societal issues influenced by the CCP, marking a particularly disheartening trend. The reluctance of Chinese people to date, marry, or have children is largely due to the economic pressures such as costly healthcare, parental support, job scarcity, and the ability to sustain oneself. Ultimately, these societal challenges stem from the economic conditions shaped by the CCP. In May 2023, the China Family Planning Association launched pilot projects in more than 20 cities to provide subsidies for housing, taxation, and education for families with 2 or more children. But the government's efforts have been widely mocked on social media, with hardly any young people believing that these projects will help them. When these measures fail, the CCP resorts to other means. As early as 2009, a researcher at the State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission, Luo Tianhao, drew great attention and discussion among the Chinese people with his article, China needs to introduce 100 million African immigrants within 10 years to solve China's aging problem. When people thought this was just a pipe dream, the government did not just stop at the propaganda level, but had taken real actions many years ago. At the 2015 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Johannesburg, Xi Jinping promised to provide 50,000 government scholarships and 50,000 training opportunities for Africa. China's universities have eagerly recruited African students with extremely generous benefits. In his official speech, the leader of the Study Abroad Center of the Ministry of Education, Liu Jinghui, admitted to the significant increase in enrollment and preferential treatment for the students from Belt and Road countries. During the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China in 2019, Minister of Education Chen Baosheng stated that by 2049, China would become the most desirable destination for studying abroad. Many foreign students have also been retained by Chinese state-owned enterprises and public institutions. Many high-end talent recruitment fairs for foreign students held in various places are intended to pave the way for these outsiders to stay in China. Compared with many impoverished countries in Africa, the livability of many cities in China undoubtedly attracts many Africans. Therefore, more and more African people are happily coming to China and not wanting to leave. For example, in Guangzhou, the peak number of Africans once reached as high as 500,000, and then later they surged to Yiwu in Zhejiang. The advanced wholesale market for small commodities enables them to buy products and sell in their own countries, capitalizing on significant price disparities to earn substantial profits. In recent years, the number of African people in China has continued to grow, and many of them have settled in China and made a living. Mixed-race children are also gradually becoming more common. Experts predict that the number of African people in China will peak at 100 million by 2050. China's marriage crisis and population decline are going to be solved by African immigration. China's real estate crisis is solved by returning to planned economic welfare and distributing houses. Xi Jinping's imagination is beyond the grasp of ordinary people. But the whole world can predict that China, under the rule of the Chinese Communist Party, is heading towards an irreversible abyss.